Do you crave better self-esteem and confidence, but struggle to silence your anxiety, fears, and insecurities? If so, welcome to the sisterhood of fellow travelers on the path to reclaiming their self-confidence and happiness. I'm Jennifer DeBellis, award-winning author, speaker, and assault survivor. I spent the past few decades helping young women like you overcome fear, self-doubt, and trauma to reclaim their joy and self-worth. I cannot wait to share the secrets I learned on my own healing journey and help you restore your inner warrior as I show you the skills and tools you need to save your own broken world. If you're ready to empower your inner warrior to overcome fear, doubt, and anxiety, turn off those distractions and tune in to this episode. Over the past few episodes, we've talked about our Exodus journey and departure from an old way of thinking and living. We unpacked the importance of putting in the work to heal and repair broken areas that keep us from moving forward. And we took a serious look at areas in our lives and thinking that have enslaved us to fear, doubt, and anxiety, ultimately turning us to prisoners on our Exodus journey. Today, I want to bring this Exodus focus full circle with a little one-on-one chat about just taking that first step. Seriously, what are you waiting for? The conditions will never be perfect or perfectly clear to us. The reality is, the very thing holding us back from entering the promised land is most likely that old way of thinking or living, not the timing itself. I cannot wait to share my own trials and triumph stories about how radically my life changed for the better when I stopped allowing fear, doubt, and anxiety to direct my steps. Once you see how simple it is, I know you will begin to truly live the life you dreamed about. So if you're ready to see how to take that first step, this next episode is for you. In this episode, you'll hear about some pivotal moments that changed my way of thinking and responding in my life. You'll gain some insights into how to navigate fear, doubt, and anxiety when making those life changes, and you'll learn some actionable strategies to take those first steps toward your goals and desired outcomes. So I want to open today's episode with a time in my young life that really changed the way I think and respond to things. So back when I was 5 years old, yes, I'm taking you back to when I was 5 years old, and I had just started kindergarten. So my mom, my baby sister, and I had to move to Florida to live with our grandparents because my sister's health was really, really bad. And at that time we were stationed in Germany, and they wouldn't let my dad end his service early. So we had to get her out of there. So we ended up moving to Florida, and I was about to start kindergarten. And we were at this big church picnic. There were a bunch of adults and teenagers playing badminton. And they were playing with several people on each side of the net with all these rackets. I had never seen badminton before. And I'm watching them play. And I'm completely baffled about how the game is supposed to be played. And one of the adults was like, "Jennifer, would you like to come and join us?" And I, in my head, was like, yes, I want to come and join you. But then there was also that voice inside my head that was like, you don't know what you're doing. And so I went out onto the grass, and someone handed me the racket, and they were trying to tell me how to do it. And I kind of choked up and I froze. And there were several people who were encouraging me, and I could see my mom start to walk over, and she was so frustrated with me for not just trying it. I could see her coming, and that little girl in me who was like, oh, I'm about to lose this opportunity. It froze me up even more. The woman who was trying to show me how to do it, she was just like, hey, you just drop the birdie and you hit it like this. And I held the racket, and she tossed it up a few times for me because I wouldn't even take it out of her hand and toss it, and tried to show me how to do the racket, and I didn't do anything. So now my mom comes in, she pulls me away. She's so frustrated. She's so aggravated with me. And I'm more mad at myself than she could ever be frustrated with me in that moment. And I sat there. Inside, I was kind of crying, but outside, I just sat there so defeated and so angry with myself for allowing that fear and the doubt drive this anxiety that wouldn't even let me just even try it. And so I sat for a good amount of time just watching them play and laugh and
fun is my love language. I love to have fun with other people. I love to play physical games. So while I'll sit and play cards and play board games and have fun, I really love to play athletic games. So this was one of those opportunities where here I had potential to play something and learn something, and I did neither. I gave up on that opportunity. And as I sat there and I watched them play, I started to understand what it was she was asking me to do, and something in me shifted, walking away from that experience. Because I realized in that moment, 5 years old, that the feeling of not trying far outweighed trying and failing. What was I going to lose? And that's what I just kept sitting there pining over. Even at 5 years old, I understood, what am I going to lose by trying and not getting it right? Maybe someone will let me try it again. Maybe I won't succeed now, but now if I know this is something that I'm interested in getting better at or learning how to do, now I have the practical skills, even if they're bad, to walk away from it and then go back and try again and practice until I can master some of the basic skills to be able to play the next time. And I didn't do that in my own capacity, though I did sit and I did watch and I did learn a lot of skills and a lot of strategies from watching everybody play. So everything I learned about badminton that day was not from hands-on, which is a far easier way to learn things. You don't do it right. Someone shows you, no, try this, try that. But everything that I learned about the game, I had to learn as a witness, as a silent, suffering, frustrated witness. But the bigger lesson here for me was that I decided to become a skilled observer. I decided that, you know what? You can learn so much from watching and seeking answers and seeking to understand something, especially if it's happening right in front of you. If you have access to something, even if you aren't trying it yourself for the first time, you're there. You can watch, you can study, you can listen, you can do all of those things that help you become better acquainted with the dynamics of a specific discourse or with the language in that particular discourse, with the way people inhabit that space and interact with one another. And that was a really important life lesson that I learned entering kindergarten, which also helped me because if you've tuned into other episodes, you may remember me saying I went to 4 kindergartens before I finished that grade. And I moved around a lot when I was in elementary school. So this really sitting back, being a good, skilled observer, and then taking those risks and taking those steps into situations became an invaluable lesson and skill for me to continue practicing. Otherwise, I would have been this miserable kid just sitting there, frustrated with myself for not even taking steps and not even trying things and seeing if I even liked them. Ultimately, what this taught me was the value of taking high risk, low stakes approaches to things. So I talked about this next story that I'm going to share with you in a previous episode. So I'll recap it in a different way from a different perspective here, though. When you think about this high risk, low stakes situation, I think about a recent interaction that I had last summer when I was staying at a friend's cottage on a small private lake, and I love to paddle this lake. And so I was out, everybody finally left the house. There was a bunch of people in the cottage that weekend, and everybody had to leave and scatter, and I was staying an extra day or two. So I'm like, I'm going to go and paddle the lake now that everybody's gone, and just who cares how long it takes me. I'm going to go out there. Maybe I'll stop, maybe I'll hang out, lay out on the board. So I get out, I'm paddling on the lake, and all weekend I had seen this group of women, and you could tell that they were women who had left the kids and the husbands behind and were just there for a woman's weekend. They were having a blast. They had this big inflatable island thing that was like a boat that they could float out, and they were just laughing, and there was constant amusement and laughter and joy coming from that side of the lake all weekend. So now you can see that, it's Sunday, people are starting to wrap up. There's still a few women outside, but it's a little bit calmer of a group. So I'm paddling, and there's these 2 women sitting on these 2 different paddle boards, and they're just kind of hanging out and they're just talking. I'm not paddling too close to them. I'm kind of staying far away. I usually go into the loop of that part of the lake, but I didn't want to, get in their way. The lake is big enough. So I was like, I'm just going to circle around early. And all of a sudden they start shouting stuff to me. And they're like, girl, like, goddess, slaying it. Oh my God, I can't believe you're standing up. They were just saying all these really cool things. Like, I'm so jealous. And, God's like, paddle over. I'm like, come on, I don't want to talk to people. I just got rid of everybody. I just want to enjoy the quiet and the sun and the lake and the water and the paddling. And I'm like, all right, I'll be obedient. So I paddle over and they're saying stuff to me. And the whole time I'm paddling over and I'm listening to them, speak to me with such encouragement and awe, it just really dawned on me that they don't even realize how simple it is to stand up on the paddleboard. They honestly just don't know. And they don't know, like, what's the big deal if you fall in? So I paddle over, I'm talking to them. The one gal's like, yeah, I've always wanted to do it, but I'm afraid. And I'm like, what are you afraid of? I literally said this. It's a high risk, low stakes thing. I'm like, you try it? I'm like, how deep's the water here? Can you touch? And she's like, yeah. I said, so you fall off into water that you can touch the bottom, so you don't have to worry about can you swim, although I know you probably can swim. So that would be the worst thing that happens as you fall off into the water. And she was like looking at me like I had said something really crazy, like, oh my gosh, right? You make me sound ridiculous when you say it that way. So I go, if you want to just go for a quick paddle, I'll show you how to, get up there, how to balance really quickly and how easy it is. She looks at her friend and she says, all right, why don't you go start packing up? You were getting ready to paddle in anyway. And yes, I would love to learn how to do this. So now, within 30 seconds, I've got her standing up on the board. And I'm showing her how to paddle, and I'm just encouraging her. And the thought, that struck me in that moment was the lack of confidence that she clearly had in trying something that she really desperately wanted to do, and she really desperately wanted to know how to do it right and well. And here she was. And she didn't fall off the board. She was paddling around, even stopping. At one point, we were just standing on the boards, talking. Now we're in water that we can't touch the bottom. There's no look of fear, no look of panic. There's no anxiousness about her. She's super calm. She's super in charge. She's in charge. She's completely locked in to this experience and inhabiting it boldly and confidently and succeeding. And it was just that simple. And so there's a really great analogy for me to hold on to when we think about maybe there's things that have a little bit more risk attached to them. But again, sometimes the stakes are not that high. And we often think that risk and stakes are the same. And so we don't try a lot of things because that fear, that doubt, that anxiety starts to kick in. And we're like, oh, but the stakes. But no, they're not the same thing. So if we can separate that out and say, well, what's the worst thing that happens? I fall down. I don't succeed the first time. It doesn't go off as I planned. Where my paddleboarding courage came from, there's a backstory to that also informs this what do you have to lose concept. But this one had higher stakes. So we had been in California a few summers ago for the first time. I finally made it to California. And everywhere I go, I try to do two things. I try to paddle if there's an opportunity for me to get on a lake or get on the ocean and paddleboard. And I also try to do barefoot runs on a beach. So those are two things that I'm constantly trying to strategically plan out for myself because they are things that are a lot harder for me to do in my regular everyday life at home. So we're there. Of course, I find a paddleboard place. And I say, look, we can paddle, or if you'd rather canoe, or you'd rather kayak, they have those options also. It was my daughter, her friend, and my close friend. So the four of us were on this trip, and everybody's like, no, we'd like to try to paddle. So now we show up, and yes, we're in this bay, and the ocean is not too far away outside of this alcove. And we're going through the little mini training that you have to go through before they'll let you rent the paddle and go out there. I mean, this isn't a lake. This is a little bit different. And one of the things that right away was a danger element was it was stingray mating season. And the stingrays come up into the sand, into the really shallow sand, and you really can't see them because they bury themselves. You don't want to get stung by one of them. It's like getting struck by lightning. It takes people down, takes their breath away. So she's going through all this stuff. Don't walk on the board, use your pole, all this other stuff. Now, I've been snorkeling in enough intercoastal waters and spaces like this to know, there are other dangers also. There are sharks, smaller sharks, but that doesn't mean that they don't pose a danger. And other wildlife. We're in the ocean. This is we're in their element, not in our own element. So now I'm listening to all this. I'm thinking about, I don't want to fall in the water because there's all these different things that could possibly happen. So I'm going through all these thoughts in my head. And I'm also the one who has the phone, who's going to take pictures of everybody because I'm the most experienced paddler in our group. And everybody else is like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. But they all want pictures. Now I have the added pressure to have to be able to stand up with the camera. I have to be able to put it back down into the pouch that I have strapped to my bulkhead straps. No pressure. No pressure at all. And the stingrays. You got to get past the stingrays. You got to get in and out. And you have to be able to stand up. You have to be able to paddle. Every time a boat comes in or out of the bay, the wake picks up, increases your risk factor of falling. And again, this isn't like the lake that I'm used to, like, oh, what's the big deal? You know, nothing's gonna eat me alive in here. But now I have that in the back of my head, which when I started to weigh out the odds, that's another thing we don't do. We don't take a moment to just play the odds game in your head. Like, what are the odds that this would happen? What are the odds that that would happen? We have a higher probability of getting in a really severe car accident and being severely injured or killed. But yet most of us get in an automobile every single day, multiple times a day. And yet we freak out about doing things like flying in an airplane because it's high and it's scarier. But really, the odds are that you will never be in a plane crash, even if you flew once a week, because there just aren't as many plane crashes as there are automobile accidents. But yet we travel by automobile all the time and we don't even think about it. We don't do the odds game and think about it like I'm talking to you right now. But yet when it comes to certain things like, oh, let me try this in a different environment or let me try this with a different spin on it, we forget to play the odds game. And so I started doing the odds. What are the odds? And I asked the lady, and I don't remember her answer, but I asked the lady, what are the odds of getting stung by a stingray? She said, well, your odds are pretty good if you follow the instructions I just said to you. So we're out there on the water. We're paddling to where it opens up to the ocean. And it's just breathtaking. It's just absolutely beautiful. And the water is so clear. You can actually see the wildlife. And we're all standing. At some point, when we started getting closer to the ocean, everyone else in my group was like, okay, I'm down on my knees now, because they were like, I'm not waiting this out. And I'm up going like, all right, we have life jackets on. We're tied to the board. So I'm like, all right, if I fall off, I'm not going far. And I have these other 3 people who can like try to pull me closer, try to help me or whatever. And once I did that mental check of what are the odds that something's going to happen to me. I mean, come on, like I've snorkeled before. I swim in the ocean all the time. Like, again, why does it all of a sudden become this more anxious thing when I'm on the paddleboard? And I'm like, I'm not going to let all these fears and all this doubt and anxiety get in the way. Like, what really is the worst thing that happens is probably my hair gets wet. And then I have to deal with my wet hair. The thing that I did in that moment was I decided to take the step. That's it. It was that simple. I decided to get up, take the pictures, put the camera away, and start paddling. One step at a time, one stroke at a time. I got up and I did it. And then my confidence in the situation and my confidence in myself grew out of just taking those first steps and making the decision to do it. So sometimes the first step is to say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it. And then you have to actually do it. So you can't do what I did in the badminton example and say, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it. And then you get out there and you're frozen and you're holding the racket. You're just like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And you start panicking and you freeze up. That's not what I'm talking about. Make the decision to try. Make the decision that it's going to be okay if you fail. Make the decision that you're going to try better if you do fail. You have to keep deciding to do those things. That is the first step in the promised land. And you often don't go into the promised land without fear, doubt, or anxiety. They come along with you. They don't just go away also if you ignore it. So if you say, oh, I'm not going to deal with the fear, I'm not going to deal with the doubt, I'm not going to, adjust my thinking or challenge my thinking, they're not just going to go away. I want you to think about this. I use this analogy in other episodes also because I love it. because we all understand it. So coming back to the automobile, the car thing, there's a dashboard. And there are different sensors that go off and let us know like something's going on. Maybe it's the check engine light. Maybe it's low pressure in the tire. Maybe it's a low oil, low fuel. These are all different things that let us know you got to deal with something here, or proceed with caution, or get this in to have somebody who's more expert look at it. Ultimately, that's asking us to get at the root of the problem, to get at the root, to fix it so we can keep going. Because we know that with a car, if we ignore those warning signs long enough, the car will break down. And it might break down to such an extent that it will never run again. That you would have to take things apart and completely rebuild them or replace them like an engine or a transmission. No small feat, no small repair. So now you don't want to ignore big things because they do not just resolve on their own. If you don't take the warning that your tire is low, eventually that tire is going to go flat and you're either going to be driving on the rim or the tire is going to shred off and then you will be driving on the rim. And you can't drive that way down the road. You can drive a little while and then that rim is garbage. And let me tell you, rims are really expensive to replace, as are tires, when you could have just put air in it and you would have gotten 30 more thousand miles out of them. The other thing about those check engine lights or those warning signals is that they don't often tell us exactly what's wrong, or they don't get us to the root of the problem. They might just tell us something that's on the surface and then we have to take it in, or if we're fixing it ourselves, we start to pull stuff out and then we start to notice, oh my gosh, this is also broken and this is broken. And of course, going farther and farther, this needs to be clean, this needs to be fixed. And sometimes when you start to take things apart, you start to find those things so that they're able to be all fixed at the same time. And when you consider the alternatives, breaking down on the side of the road, or worse, blowing your engine or blowing your transmission, and then you have a much bigger problem on your hands. And you still have all those little problems as well. So it's really important that we deal with these things because we're also not going to just park the car and not use it. But yet, when we talk about this Exodus journey and this working towards stepping into the promised land, so many of us, like we talked about last episode, just remain a slave and we're imprisoned right there on the Exodus path, not knowing what to do. We've parked ourselves and said, I know I'm supposed to be moving forward. I know I'm supposed to be doing this thing, but I'm just broken down. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid. I don't know if it's going to be what I think it's going to be, or I don't know how to do everything and all that stuff, and that anxiety and that fear and all those doubtful thoughts that come in. They're driven by two things: fear of the unknown and fear that is rooted to prior experience. When it comes to prior experience, maybe we've failed at something in the past. Maybe things didn't go as we hoped or planned. Did we get hurt by someone or something? Have we been conditioned to believe that we aren't capable, that we don't deserve this, that we're never going to get there? Then there's fear of the unknown. How can we possibly know how something is going to go until we just try it? We won't know until we know, as the saying goes. How will you know how something's going to work, if it's going to work, if it's going to fail, if, for the love of God, you're even going to like it and want to continue in that path and continue in that direction if you don't try it? Do you know how many college students I work with teaching in higher ed that get a degree and they just keep going through the motions of getting, like, I have to do it, I started the program, or there's pressure from loved ones, and then they get the degree and they're like, as soon as they start working in the industry, they're like, oh my God, this is not me. Like, not only is this not in my passion and wheelhouse, this is awful. This is not something I can see myself doing every single day. I see it all the time. So we have to try things, and then we also have to adjust, which I talk about in other episodes. We have to be able to make those changes or those adjustments along the way, and maybe even change our course a little bit. So if we were just going straight ahead, just blindly doing it, there will be times when we need to go in a different direction, even if it's just like, right, a little tiny vein off to the right a little bit, and make sure you're going in the right direction. And when it comes to anxiety, that's that discomfort that we feel when our brain and our body tell us something's going to be scary or hard or unpleasant, or it might not go as we hoped. Now, I'm not talking about clinical anxiety, although a lot of that is compounded and driven by this very things here, and how you will navigate that anxiety might differ a little bit, but the skills that I'm going to talk about can apply to dealing with all types of anxiety, maybe even getting in front of the anxiety before it becomes a full-blown attack. So these are effective strategies. They're science-backed. So one of the number one things that I've learned to navigating fear and doubt and trying to really get in front of that anxiety is to trust my instincts. So we have to trust our gut and that intuition and that discernment. We have to lean into those instincts and let the voice of that be louder than the anxiety. Let that sink in for a moment. You have to let that voice be louder than the anxiety. So it's like, think about yourself, you're in a noisy space, and that anxiety is all the tunnel noise, all that noise that's in the background, other people talking, and you've got to start to tune that out so that you can tune in to the right voice. That is not ignoring, that is tuning into the right things. Keep your focus on the right voice. Keep your focus on the right things. You've already done the work to set out, what do I want? What are some of the things that I have to do to work toward getting what I want? Those ultimate outcomes that we've talked about previously. You've already done all that stuff. So now you have to tune into that voice and you have to recognize it. You have to become intimate with that voice, that instinct, that when you do listen to your instincts and listen to your gut, sometimes that fear that tried to get our attention, that warning signal that tried to get our attention wasn't like, oh, run the other direction. Maybe it was like, hey, before you do that, make sure this is in place, or make sure you have the right people with you, or whatever the warning is. I don't want to digress into that because if you want to listen to that, I'll throw that episode in the show notes below and you can find that episode. But it comes down to kind of testing those instincts then. When you're tuning in, finding the right voice, who am I listening to? Why am I listening to that voice? The more work you do in that area, the louder that voice becomes. So now that anxiety and how it drives the fears and the doubts might still rear its ugly head. It might still be saying stuff to you, but you're focused. You're locked in to the right voice. And you also don't have to just rely on yourself. You have plenty of options out there to get good counsel and support. So whether it's the traditional route of talking to a therapist or a counselor or your preacher or clergy or a friend or a loved one, a mentor, somebody who speaks into your life. And if you're like me, who I also rely on my spiritual route, I lean into my faith. I lean into prayer. And that spirit-soul connection where you have to get alone and meditate, be alone with the spirit, be alone with the self, and then things will become clear. So those voices will now become clearer and you will have the discernment and you have to trust that to start taking those steps. You don't have to have it all planned out. You have to be willing to change some of those things and expectations that you had going in if things aren't working the right way. And the quicker you do it and the quicker you recognize that you need to do it, the better the experience is going to be. We cannot allow our emotions to direct our steps. Period. That's not the thing that tells you where to step. Your emotions are not the thing that guide your steps. And spoiler alert, you may not be able to entirely remove these emotions from your inner wiring. Perhaps you'll only succeed at updating some of this wiring and reprogramming the output. Think of these emotions, fear, doubt, and anxiety, like people who actually exist in your life. So maybe if we're not like, oh, the voices in your head, maybe get them out. Maybe they're like characters in your narrative. They're people who exist in your life. You know what I'm talking about. There are different personalities that speak to us in our lives. There are different loved ones, family members, colleagues, people in our communities, people that we run in the same circles that have these different personalities where maybe we don't receive everything they're saying, like maybe they're always negative, or maybe they're always worried and anxious, and maybe they're always like everything has to be perfect. That maybe there are some things that they say or concerns that they raise that have validity. So you don't want to just dismiss all of these things, but you're also taking it under advisement. How much of this do I need to apply? How deep do I need to let this come in? And what am I going to do with it? So you're not letting somebody outside of yourself tell you exactly what you have to do and exactly what steps you have to take. You have to decide those things on your own based on everything you collect and bring together and then sit with. You've got to sit with your stuff. You are the most qualified person to make the ultimate decision, but you can't stay sitting there either. So sometimes you need to carry it all with you and just take a step. You just need to take that first step. I know that you don't want to hear that you may never silence fear, doubt, and anxiety, but taking the first steps will show you and those emotions how things will play out. Not suggesting blindfolded steps. I know there's the expression, walk in blind faith. That's not what it means. I'm not saying to be hasty or not paying attention to the path before you and to the steps that you're taking. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying that, yes, you have to do some homework. You've got to study a little bit. You've got to come up with a plan. You've got to learn the language and learn the land, all of those things. But then you try and you see. And that's the simple part. It may not be entirely easy, but that's the simple part. We'll never know if something is right for us until we enter that space. So, number one, you need to decide to take the step. I love this analogy, this short story that I read when I was an undergrad, and then I teach it in my college classes. The story is called Mud by Jeffrey Forsyth. And ultimately, it's about this man who's kind of stuck in his dead past. And I won't give away all the different things because it's a pretty cool story. He's stuck in his dead past, and he gets to the end, and he's kind of standing between a threshold between his dead past and then the world that's waiting for him beyond, where all of his living relationships, his dreams, and his life await him. And he's standing with one foot in the land of the dead and the other foot in the land of the living. And he ultimately has to make that choice. He has to take a step and be completely inhabiting one space. That's the kind of step I'm talking about. I'm not talking about dipping your toe in and keeping it there and saying, I wonder, can I feel how good the water is here? I'm talking about putting both feet in the water. So he has to make that decision. He cannot stand divided between two places. We can't do that. And it's just this great metaphor and analogy to live by. You've got to take the step, and that means both feet have to be firmly planted in the land of the living, in the place where everything that you desire to fulfill those outcomes and your purpose in life are waiting for you. Number two, you have to assess what happens when you're fully there. You have to look around. You have to see, how does it feel? There's so many different things. We could probably talk about that in a whole other episode about what to do in these two steps. In the briefest sense, you're collecting information and you're doing some statistical data analysis, for a lack of a better word, to see what comes next, which leads me to number three, adjust and then take another step. So maybe once you've collected all the information and you're assessing it, now you need to adjust or just keep going and keep moving. You have to make that decision. I'm practicing this concept currently right now in my life. So I know I've talked about I'm making some huge career changes right now, and I'm doing it. Is it a little scary? Yes. But I'm already standing in my promised land. So I'm already in it with both feet firmly planted, and I'm just taking the next step and I'm finding my way. And so I'm already moving down that path, and this is coming into view. So now, remember I talked about this last episode where things in the promised land will start to come into view once you're there. It's very hard to see when you're in the outskirts, just outside the rural area that leads to the city gates, that leads to the city, when there's all these trees and scrub brush and all this overgrown stuff. You've literally got to get past the wilderness right outside of the promised land. You've got to be on the path so that things on the horizon then start to become more visible. And then once you're there, resist running back. And I'll get into that a little bit more. But sometimes you will make those mistakes and you'll go back to something For me, it was going back into teaching, where a year and a half ago, I stepped away from higher ed classrooms for lots of reasons I'm not going to get into in this episode. But I knew I was in a season right now where I needed to find something that I could quickly supplement my income. And this opportunity came up where I could pick up a couple classes at a college that I've taught at for the last decade. And so I was like, all right, how bad can it be? I'll just strip it down. How bad can it be? And then now I'm here and I'm really trapped. And I really feel like I'm in kind of a prison where I'm trapped behind endless grading. And it's so dreadful. And some of the things that I said I will never deal with again and I will never do this again to myself, I'm dealing with. And it's awful to have to try to force myself to sit down for day upon day upon day to get through some of these larger assignments that I have to grade. And I can't short the students. It's not fair to them. So I have to put in the quality of work that my moral fiber is attached to. So there's no cutting corners in certain regards, that I just have to do it. So now I'm here, I have to do it. But then as I'm doing this and I'm realizing, okay, I need to make some changes. I'm not really entirely sure what those changes are, but I know the things that I love to do. I'm working on this project in this book that I co-authored, and there's so many different new things or old things that are becoming new again. And I'm like, oh yeah, I love doing this and I love doing that. And I could just spend days and days and days doing these different things. And all of a sudden a friend of mine reaches out and says, oh my gosh, my company's looking for someone to fill this role. And it just seems like every single thing on the job description is in your wheelhouse. You should check it out. So now I'm going through this and I'm about to start this new chapter. I'll talk about it with you another time. But the interesting thing is I'm sitting in this second interview with the whole entire team that I'll be working with, and all the things they're talking about, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, that's stuff I love to do, that's stuff I'm good at doing. And it was like, are there major changes that I'm going to have to make? Yes, those changes are frustrating. I'm going to lose a lot of my freedom. I'm going to lose a little bit of pay starting out. I'm going to lose time, even in just commuting and having to leave the house and work in an office. There's a lot of freedoms and a lot of things that are going to have to change and that I'm going to give up. So I decided to take that step and just go and see, what do they have to offer me? Do I get a discernment in a sense of this might be a good fit? And you know what? I stopped focusing on how I believe things should look and just said, okay, all right, God, I'm at this crossroad. What am I supposed to do? I don't want to turn back around and go back where I came from. I already know I'm living it right now. I do not want to teach in higher ed right now. I may never want to go back to teaching in higher ed. I have to give myself opportunities to try other things, not just little things. I've been trying little things and realizing, oh, I really like these little things. I wonder if I can make them bigger. So now here comes this opportunity. And where I kept thinking my opportunity was straight ahead, it actually is a little bit to the left. It's a little bit to the left of it. So now I'm like, okay, I am going to decide to see what's possible. That's a step. So when we do this figurative language where we're talking about walking, sometimes taking a first step is just deciding to consider something. It's deciding I'm going to do something. So I'm excited to try this thing that just felt right on so many levels. And I'm also recognizing that some of it's going to be really hard. Not just hard for all the things I just listed, but it's hard to learn a whole new job. It's hard to fit yourself into a community that's already existing and already thriving. But I'm up for the challenge. That's part of my end game. One of my end goals is to be able to thrive in these professional and creative communities. And here's this role that seems like it was just custom made for me, and I'm excited to see where it leads. So my next step is to just try it out. What is the worst that happens? They don't like me? I don't like them? Well, then we adjust. Then we sit back, we assess, and we go, okay, what do I need to do? Is this not the right place for me? Are there things that I need to change or improve? I can't overthink that stuff. I can't get anxious about it. What if it doesn't happen at all? And then all I do is spend so much time thinking about it could happen, and then I don't try. And I don't see for myself that this is going to happen or that's not going to happen. So I do not have to have every little thing figured out. I just have to decide to take the next step. I've already done the first step, and I'm about to do the second step, and see where it leads me. I'm not going to check all of my feelings at the door. I'm going to let my feelings also help me discern what I need to discern when I'm assessing and adjusting whatever I might need to adjust. You don't have to know what comes next either. So I have to tell myself, be open to what is coming next. Be open to it not looking like what you thought it might look like. And that's okay. And maybe, just maybe, it might look better than I could have imagined it looking. Maybe it looks so different than what I could imagined it look like that I would have missed it had I tried to run ahead. So now you get to follow me over the coming weeks to see how things go in this new direction in my promised land. And until we meet again, I want you to make a decision to take a step into your promised land. So I don't have to know what that is right now, but I want you to move beyond the thinking and decide to take a step. Don't worry about having it all planned or figured out. Just think about what small yet actionable step in the right direction can you take. And again, you have to be familiar with what those end outcomes are that you're after. And you don't have to run like it's a race. These are small, actionable steps. And whatever you do, don't run back in the direction that you came from. There is a reason why you are not going back in that direction. And if you have to learn the lesson again, like I'm doing right now with teaching, go ahead. I can't control you. Go back and then realize, oh yes, I am going in the wrong direction. And then you're going to have to come back down the path to find yourself at the entrance to that promised land. So be encouraged today to just use that discernment, dial in, and decide what it is that you're going to do to take that first step. And I'll see you next week. Well, girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, don't forget to follow my channel and share it with girlfriends who also want to restore their self-worth and confidence. If you haven't already, consider joining my Facebook group of women just like you, the Restore Your Inner Warrior Sisterhood. Here's a safe space to get tips, share stories, and find community support. And if this podcast inspired you, consider leaving a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. As you go through your day, may your empowered spirit, heart, and mind guide you. Catch new episodes every Saturday. Ciao.